But at the same time, if you go to the city today, particularly starting in about a few weeks, you will see cruise ships coming into the harbor on a regular basis, 80, 90 cruise ships a season. And as you can see, the size of these ships, they're as large as the tallest building in the city. This is our tallest building in the city, the Hilton Hotel. And so from the top deck of the ship, you're pretty much in line with the cruise ships. So this suggests, the slide suggests the changing economy. And I'll talk about what our project is looking at. In 2002, the idea for this project came about pretty much due to a very simple fact that when you read the urban literature, small cities are seldom acknowledged. It's mainly Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver is where we're studying what's going on in urban centers. And as I think we've been hearing today, smaller cities, rural regions have different, in some respects, I think, solutions and different needs and different challenges in some respects. Sorry. We began to look at the changes in the economy that were happening in St. John, but the main purpose was really to try and document what was this urban region doing to try and reshape its economic base. What was happening on the labor force front, what was happening on the economic development front, what was happening on the cultural front. And of course, in the midst of all of this, then we get the province promoting the city as, in a sense, a renewed industrial region based primarily on energy. But I don't think this is inconsistent with our look at kind of an industrial, post-industrial transition that we were observing. Because in many respects, I think these new industries and related spin-off industries to a nuclear plant, to a new oil refinery, in many respects are very capital-intensive, knowledge-based, and I think can also be considered within the context of post-industrial economic transition. Some of the research results will, I think, establish benchmarks for future measurements of social, environment, and economic conditions. I think it was also recognized that this community-based project could provide some unique opportunities from our point of view at the university for some community-based education and training opportunities for our students. And over the course of the 5-year project, which was generously funded by Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council to the tune of approximately $200,000 a year, I think we've had 80 undergraduate and graduate students employed, either full-time or part-time. And so even for a small city and for a small campus like my campus, 2,500 students, 80 summer jobs over the course of a 4.5-year period is quite a significant economic generator on its own, irrespective of of anything else that we're talking about. Well, the partners in the project, of course, was our campus, UNB St. John, and the New Brunswick Museum, which just happens to be located in St. John, although it's the provincial museum. The advantage of having the museum as a partner is that the curators and the curatorial staff at the museum have a level of expertise that you often don't find in a small community. And so to work with the university, with our faculty members, was a great opportunity for us to get to know each other, to get to know their research program and their outcomes in terms of how they translate their research into visual exhibits and so on. It's a great opportunity for our faculty to work with them. But then we also had 3 other partners which were much smaller, non-governmental groups. The Atlantic Coastal Action Program, which is a local environmental group, very much involved in promoting the need for harborfront cleanup, marshland reclamation projects, waterway cleanup, and so on. The Human Development Council, which I've been actively involved with as a board member, which is really a social planning agency, anti-poverty group, has generated a lot of interest in identifying some of the challenges that St. John has faced. And then the small group that a very small group, but it's been very beneficial having them as part of our project, was the Peninsula Heritage Incorporated. Community association on that peninsula I showed you at the beginning of my presentation that runs a small museum and a tea house and is really if you wish, the economic development organization for the peninsula. It's an unincorporated area, so there's no municipal representation. It comes under a different set of legislation than the municipalities in the immediate vicinity of St. John. So it's a different, anyway, it was really great to have them along, and I'll try to explain how I think the partnership helped both us and them. Well, we organized the project, if you wish, or the research program, I guess is a better way to describe it, around 4 themes. And there were more than 25 different projects associated with these themes, usually led by a faculty member or a museum curator or a member of one of our partner groups, or sometimes a team, 2 or 3 people working together. And then they would work with our students to get the project underway. And so it was a bit of a challenge administratively on my part as the Dean of Arts. And I used my staff as much as I could, as well as the human resources staff of the university, the finance office of the university, and so on, to provide the administrative support to do the hiring and so on, to pay the bills and so on. And I do recall the finance office calling me one day, Robert, what is the Dean of Arts office buying a fishing net for? And I'll explain when I show you some of the projects, but we had rented a fishing vessel from a local fisher, and in the process of one of our projects had torn his net, and I had to spend several $100s replacing the net. Arranged around people, environment, urban and rural planning, and cultural representations of the urban area. Just to give you a sample of some of the projects, I don't have all of the projects listed, and they are listed at our website. First project that I've been involved in directly is a demographic and socioeconomic profile of the urban region. First of all, we needed to get the numbers down, the labor force numbers, and it really was using StatsCan data to provide a profile of the region. A more detailed labor force analysis is a project that I've worked on as well, trying to understand labor force changes that were happening in the region. Randy Hatfield, the executive director of the Human Development Council, established a social indicators project looking at different benchmarks for measuring whether or not progress is being made on a variety of social measures. And his organization was very involved in that. Another thing that St. John, I guess, is known for, it's had kind of a branding as the loyalist city. So it's had a very Anglophone, white Anglophone, Protestant, although there were many Irish Catholics there as well, image of itself. And yet, so one thing we wanted to do is to highlight what were some of the minority groups either in the past or currently there. And so we've done a project on the Francophone community in St. John, which is actually, we discovered, the biggest minority group in the city. And we also looked at a history of the black community, the Jewish community, and so on. So we had a kind of a multicultural view of the city as well in these projects. Under the environmental theme, we had a series of projects looking at air quality, water quality, geology, and these were, for the most part, with 1 or 2 exceptions, led by the New Brunswick Museum, where they had this very deep natural history experience among their curators. So the first one was a project, it sounds rather technical and academic, but it really was looking at a simple question whether or not air quality has changed in a 30-year period. There was a benchmark study done in the 1970s using lichens that were very susceptible to SO2 emissions, and there was a very detailed mapping in the St. John region of this. And so one of the curators at the museum decided to do replicate the project, replicate the study, and see whether or not we get the same distribution or not. Some interesting, he found that overall, due to the scrubbing technologies that have been introduced, yes, SO2 emissions seem to have been lower, but also some other interesting conclusions. Due to higher stacks and so on, the plume has spread further up the valley and into the rural areas where people often go to escape the emissions from industry. So it was kind of a double-edged kind of conclusion that his study found. Another interesting study using geology, looking at the geotourism potential for geology. Basically getting